Welcome to Prototype to Payday, where raw ideas turn into real world products. Today's episode isn't about CAD files or capital or business in general. It's about what happens in your mind when the path gets tough. We're joined by Keegan from Travel Stoics, a community centered on ancient principles of Stoicism and how they apply to modern life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a first time founder, or someone building anything that matters, this episode is about doing the hard things, delaying gratification, and developing the mental toughness required to succeed. I want to just kind of start by talking about Tribal Stoics and what it's done for Brandon and I, because that's actually where Brandon and I met. And I know I'm going off script here. This is not the intro anymore. But Brandon and I actually met in Tribal Stoics, and then we became a partnership that's actually worked really, really well for both of us. And so while I bring Keegan on, I just want to say thank you, Keegan, for doing Tribal Stoics. And I want to just do a quick plug about Tribal Stoics. What is Tribal Stoics all about? First of all, what is it, and what is it about?
Yeah, first and foremost, great to be with you men here today. Tribal Stoics is a community-based platform that's built, as you mentioned, on Stoic principles, but it's deeper and more important than that. It ultimately brings primarily business owners, male business owners, together in an environment where we don't talk about business at all. We primarily talk about the life scenarios, the emotional intelligence, being a good father, being a good husband, the little intangible things that get swept under the rug more often than not. And so it's been an incredible platform for men to come together and strengthen themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely saw a huge change in myself from when I started. Just I got a lot of confidence and a lot of self development that's not easy to put into words in a quick summary, but definitely noticed a really significant change in the way that I process and handle the stress of running a company. Because anyone that tells you it's not stressful to go off on your own is full of themselves, and it is not. It's full of ups and it's full of downs, and you need to have a way to regulate, understand, and kind of step away and really just kind of see things from a different light sometimes.
Yeah. Keegan, I would love to just kind of start with your personal journey. How did you get into Stoicism, and why did it stick with you, and why did it resonate with you so much?
Great question, Joel. So I had a very different childhood than most people. It was arduous, it was tumultuous, it was traumatic. And I was this lost kid growing up. I didn't really have a lot of powerful male role models. And so, many years transpired. I opened my own business, and what I started seeking was a community for men to come together. When I looked at the statistics in the United States, men accounted for over 82% of the suicide rate. And I wondered, why was this occurring? What were some of those underlying factors? Things like self-doubt, self-love, um, emotional intelligence. These are the things that started to come up. And I said, okay, well, if those are some of the roadblocks for men to be better versions of themselves, to be good role models, how can we develop that? So I did a quick Google search, and every single piece that I looked up was in the perspective of a female and by the voice of a female. And so I said, that's really interesting. It seems that the problem is actually lying on the male side, but the solutions aren't there. And I think that there were a lot of underlying reasons for that, generational things that had been passed down, a lot of societal influences, shifts in masculine, feminine energy. A lot of things contributed to this. So Stoicism was something that was a gateway for me, because as I did this research, it seemed to be a very prominent way for men to develop emotional intelligence. So I ordered several books. The first one, which is a roadmap for most people's Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Also Letters to a Stoic by Seneca. And so what I started to find was that those Stoic principles and values were my North Star compass. It was what pulled me out of hard times. It's what I used for my entire life to mold who I was as a man. But I had never even heard the word before. So I said, you know what? I bet you there's something to this. At the time, I was running a mastermind group, And I wanted to take all this data and information and things that I was finding and create it for men, because I had started 7 different networking and business communities, and every single one of them had breakouts for women. Not one of them had one for men. So I said, hey, maybe we can shift the dynamics of this mastermind group and bring men into it, primarily business owners, entrepreneurs, husbands, fathers. And these men started coming in, and I would just simply pull snippets from the Stoic pioneers, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, and I would create these documents, and we would just simply come together in a space and discuss it. And Brandon, you mentioned this a moment ago, but it was absolutely fascinating because we are just about to hit the 2-year mark for Tribal Stoics. And what I've seen in myself and in every man that's in the group is a dramatic increase in emotional intelligence, pausing before they respond, slowing down, taking a breath, actual applicable things in the day to day. And that gave me tremendous hope because I saw this as a way for men to be, again, better fathers, better business owners, better husbands. And that's why it stuck. And that was really the introduction for me.
I love that. I think it's important when you start talking about, especially the philosophical side of things. It's really important that the real world application shows up, because if the real world application doesn't actually show up, then there's no value into the philosophy that's given. And I think that for you, in specifically in that situation, and for Brandon, it's really the real world value of what you guys are talking about is made a difference, and it's really seen through it all.
Yeah, I mean, before Keegan, I spent a lot of time on developing my business. I'd been with lots of mentors and consultants, but never did I work on myself. The way I viewed myself, the way I thought through things. Like, I never really focused in on the emotional side or and the stress side of it, and there's so many other components to it. The personal space, personal time, what that looks like to have a sense of humor. Like, I definitely got a lot more relaxed, and just in general, because of tribal stoics and certain individuals in tribal stoics, that just kind of showed me it doesn't have to be so serious, and you can just, yeah, and it's just a good place to relate to other like-minded people.
Yeah. So I want to kind of go into the core tenets and put it into context for entrepreneurs here, Keegan. One of the things that was very big in Tribal Stoics is delayed gratification. How important is that to an entrepreneur, but how important is that to people in general? And why is it so important?
Great question again. I'll share an actual study that was conducted in the United States in several times. They took a classroom of children, and the teacher was at the front of the classroom and said, listen, every student is going to get one giant marshmallow placed in front of you. I've got to walk out of the room and go do a couple copies. And when I return, for those of you that have not consumed your marshmallow, you will get 2 additional marshmallows. And it's fascinating because 1/3 of the room immediately ate the marshmallow right away. 2/3, or the second third, I should say, they waited for a little bit, and then after about 5 minutes, they ate theirs too. And then the final third decided not to eat their marshmallows. And then the teacher returned, and they were rewarded. And so the makeup of this classroom, all the same age, but they were different demographics, different races, different genders, of course. And the fascinating thing is, 21 years after they conducted this experiment with these children, they went out into the world and they looked for those people. And they wanted to follow up the data to see how that actually played out in terms of delayed gratification. And what they found was the first third of the group that ate all of the marshmallows right away, those individuals had higher crime rates. They had lower graduation rates if they went to college at all. Most of them had children at a very young age. And they basically, the final third, the ones that did delay the gratification and waited, they had better careers. They had a higher income. They usually had stronger households, much significantly lower divorce rate if there was divorce at all. And so I think that's a beautiful study that exemplifies delayed gratification and how that plays out from the Stoic lens, is that we are in this society today where you can go on your phone, you can order something off Amazon and receive it at your doorstep, sometimes in several hours, but anywhere from several hours to a week. And so, and it's fascinating when you really track these products, because some of them are literally coming from overseas on a ship, and we're still getting that in a week. That's fascinating. The reason I think that that's important to identify is because that has totally changed the landscape of delayed gratification. We see so many people that want immediate results. They want the money, the car, the house, the relationship right away. And when they don't get it, it's this bouncing game. I used to have a friend in high school. He had a new job every 3 months. It was like, oh, well, this reason, that reason, the other reason. And I always found that to be very fascinating. So I find that, just like you alluded to earlier, Joel, is that application is way more significant than theory. It's great to have philosophy and talk about these things, but how do we actually apply it? And so, Brandon, obviously you and I have had in-depth conversations about business, you being a business owner. We both know that sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't go the way we think it will go, right? And we have to delay that process in terms of reaping the rewards. So that's how I would apply delayed gratification directly, and how it is so important for us as individuals, as business owners, and how we've seen it play out.
I want to go to so I've got a few different tenets here that I kind of want to hit. I know that when during Travel Stoics, we kind of focus on one for a full hour. We're going to go kind of rapid fire compared to that. But the next one I want to kind of hit is discipline is greater than motivation. And I want to know I want you to unpack the idea that motivation will fail you, but discipline never will. And what does that mean? Like, can you just unpack that for us?
Absolutely. Simple concept. There's a beautiful book called Motivation is a Myth. And the concept is that no person, regardless of what the landscape is, will 100% of the time be motivated. None of us are motivated to go to the gym every single morning. We're not motivated to read the book every single day. We're not motivated to do the difficult things. Discipline comes into play. Motivation is great because it can help you get started, but there comes a point where that motivation fades quickly. In order to have longevity, you've got to bring that element of discipline in. So I think discipline has gotten a bad rap because there's obviously the component of parental discipline where you've done something wrong, you get in trouble or scolded for it. But the other side is, and I posted this in our group earlier today, is often when you're going through the journey and it feels really strenuous or difficult, you are building something beautiful and heavenly. The opposite is also true. When you're going through the journey and it's very easy and you take shortcuts, you're building something that doesn't last long. So it's not easy to do the right thing all the time. That's where motivation fails us. And that's where discipline comes into play.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a famous quote I heard. I think it's, oh man, I'm blanking here, but I'm gonna probably butcher it. But basically, it's we fall to our standards. If and the thing is, like, just like that is like, whatever we will allow, that is what we are going to fall to. You do not build to your dreams. We fall to our standards, and that was such an eye-opening thing to realize, because we all dream of winning. The difference between the winners and the losers is their standards that they put out for themselves.
Yeah, it's I was just thinking about, as Keegan was talking, I was thinking about the company Guinness, the beer company. And they were created in like 1759 or something like that. And they consistently have lasted through recession after recession after recession after recession over the last 300 years or something like that. And the reason why they've lasted is because they chose to do the right thing when everyone else was trying to survive. And so they actually would put money aside in the good years so that during the years of recession, they could still pay their staff exactly the same. And it's about doing the right things. The discipline is I'm not spending that money as soon as I get it to try and grow. I'm making sure that the people that I'm responsible for are taken care of, and that's my first priority. And I to me and that's to me, when I look at what we were talking about, that discipline is greater than motivation. It's like everyone, when they get money, is motivated to invest into something themselves. I'm investing in my business, or I'm investing in um, whatever. But it takes a certain level of discipline to sit there and go, no, I'm going to make sure that these people are taken care of because they're relying on me. And that's just off of that's one example off the top of my head. But Keegan, I would love to hear, do you have any examples of kind of that working out, whether it's your own life or someone that you've mentored or coached? I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. So there are two segments I'll share. The first one is, and you just reminded me of this with the Guinness example, but Seth Thomas. Seth Thomas was a clockmaker in the United States in the early 1800s. It's fascinating because at that particular time, there were only really three predominant clockmakers in the US. And there was a great recession and depression that came through. Out of the three, he was the only one that survived it. In fact, I have one of his clocks in my house to this day. It's almost 200 years old, which is fascinating. And it's still in beautiful condition. Just the quality is outstanding. But it goes to show that going through that recession, he made it to the other side. He ended up selling the business, but he sold it for a tremendous amount because at that point, there was no competition. He was the only one that was still standing. The second example I'll give you, which I think is relevant in my world, is the gym. I love working out. I go 5 days a week consistently, do some cardio on the weekends, all that fun stuff. But the point is that you can't just show up one time and get great results. It's a consistent effort repeated over time. Arnold Schwarzenegger has a beautiful quote on this. He basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, the expression of a strong body is basically discipline because it cannot be bought, it cannot be stolen. It has to be earned every single day through diet and exercise, sleep, and water. And so when we think about that, I think the gym is a great example because, again, I believe that men and women should have some form of exercise in their daily routine. That's a whole separate conversation. But it's a beautiful example because any of the three of us could go to a doctor right now, even a specialist, and say, listen, I want, 20-inch arms, or I want 6-pack abs. How long is it going to take me to get there? And not a single specialist on earth can tell you exactly how many days or how many reps it would take to achieve that goal. They can simply tell you the habits that are required to achieve that. And I think that's a great example, right? Is that you have to continue showing up every single day. And listen, we all are humans. We all fall off once in a while, but you get back up and keep going. And I'll end with a quote. The world does not care how many times you fall down, as long as it is one less than the number of times you get back up.
I love that. That really resonates with me. When people tell me like someone's not a good entrepreneur because they failed 6 times, I'm like, you don't get it. That has nothing to do with it. Their net worth is, and not only is like their net worth the only thing that matters, but if they can show their net worth is beyond the average, then they're doing something beyond the average,
Yeah, you get compensated for what you do. It really, yeah. And especially with the gym, it's like that to me. I love that example, just simply because it's like there's no other way to get it. Like it has to be that consistency, and I think that's a great example. How do you teach people that consistency?
I really like BJ Fogg's model. BJ Fogg is used in the fitness world, but he's used in other areas as well, corporate and things like that. And essentially, his model is broken into 3 categories. So, number one, you have to have a clearly defined outcome. You got to know where you're headed, right? You got to know what the end goal is. Number 2, you have to create baby steps. A lot of people say they're going to go cold turkey or they're going to go all in, and they go so hard that it's not sustainable. So you have to take baby steps to create those actual habits. And then the third, and again, practical tip to BJ Fogg's model is triggers. you can have sight, sound, and kinesthetic triggers. And this is part of the reticular activating system, which is a 2.5 inch strand in the back of your neck. It's basically how we process data and goals. And so there's a really beautiful theory on this called the red car theory. If I said, hey, Joel, hey, Brandon, how many red cars did you see yesterday? You'd be like, I don't know. But if I went to you today and said, hey, guess what? I'll give you $100 for every single red car you see tomorrow. How many red cars would you see then? Right? So I think in actual practical implementation, you got to know where you're headed. You've got to break it down into manageable goals. And then you have to have triggers that will keep you consistent along the journey.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that to be very, very, very true. Like we're discussing a new direction of growing the like anytime, right? It's like, hey, we're gonna go this direction, or we're gonna go that direction, and all of a sudden things start to align for that to happen. Like it's almost like the universe hears you and answers your questions. It's a very powerful thing. There's tons. I mean, as you know, there's tons of information on this. There's tons of different views on this, but whatever it is, whether it's psychological or the universe, it's definitely. I don't know anyone that doesn't agree that this is like one of the secrets that you could say the elites over time have figured out.
And I think a lot of people confuse baby steps with decisiveness. Making a decision and going all in is not the same as small applicable processes, right? So a lot of people will go, oh, well, what if, or what if that happens? You're kind of missing the point. It's not about how it plays out. It's about taking the right process to get there. There was a statement we used to have back in the day that was put the pressure on the process, not on yourself, right? When you put the pressure on the process and keep showing up, it's going to play out. And the last thing, Brandon, when you touch on the energy component, it's so true. There's so many different names. There's manifestation, the law of attraction, the will of God. I mean, people put it in a plethora of different ways. But the point remains scientifically that everything on earth is a composition of energy. When you say somebody has good energy, well, they don't have good energy. They are energy, and it's an expression of that energy. And so you got to realize every single decision we make, every environment we go into, we are leaving and picking up energy. And that is a crucial part to all of this.
How do you keep people calm when chaos surrounds them?
I think the Stoics give us some beautifully practical tips here. I find that meditation is sitting with yourself, addressing the chaos and noise that goes on, but not letting it rule you. So that's one practical tip the Stoics share with us: daily meditation. Another one is journaling. And I think that we are in the best era historically to have a real process of journaling that works for us as individuals, because the traditional theory was, you get one of these guys and you write in it every single day. That's journaling. But there are a lot of different ways that people apply this now. Some people I know that I've worked with, they'll do video logs. They'll do a 30-second journal entry where at the end of the week, they just go into their phone, they record themselves and the big things that really stood out. And the cool thing about that I love is that you can come back a year later and see what you were thinking, how you process something at that point in time. And that goes into the David Goggins theory of the cookie jar. And this is another practical tip where you write down all the small wins compounded over time. You put it in that cookie jar. So when the chaos in the world is going on in your mind or whatever it might be, you can reach back in there and you pull that out. And it's that trigger. It's that reminder that, hey, I can conquer this. Look at that. See, that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, that's the practical side. Everybody experiences chaos. And one of the beautiful Stoic thoughts is that in all chaos, there is order. And in all order, there is chaos. So there's always chaos going on. It's the emotional block that shifts the way we view the chaos. And so the way that you can reduce that emotion and present that logic is to ground yourself. So again, journaling, meditation, exposing yourself to nature, those are three of, I think, the quickest ways to really calm that chaos.
All right, let's kind of just shift a bit. Now I kind of want to talk because we've already kind of built on this when we talked about discipline, but I want to talk about doing the hard things. Because I know all three of us have owned businesses. I think I'm the only one currently that doesn't have a business running. Um, but what is the mental framework that helps people push through resistance, especially when you're owning a business? Like there's those things that you just don't want to do. How is it that you just keep moving forward? Is it like because you do set goals? Is it baby steps? How do you do that?
Absolutely. Well, I think it goes back to that initial point of you've got to be clear on what you're building. But more importantly than just the outcome, you've got to know why you're aspiring towards that outcome. You also have to know who it's going to impact. And I find just by those two things alone, we dissipate that victim mentality, that woe was me, oh, this is so difficult, because it's not about us anymore. Maybe it's about your daughter or your son. Maybe it's about your husband or your wife. Maybe it's about your future grandchildren. You got to be clearly defined on that big picture outcome, why that's important to you and who it will affect. And so once you have that clearly defined, I love the reverse engineering concept. And what this simply means is, set whatever timeline is appropriate for you in the circumstance. But I like to look at that 10-year mark and then go down to the 5-year mark, and then the 3 and the 1, and then the quarterly. And so there's a memorable concept here. There's an individual named Michael Lotito. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for eating crazy things. I mean, this man ate chandeliers. He ate a Cessna plane. He ate jet skis. He ate a television. He ate bicycles. He literally ate all of these things. But the average person will go, well, how the heck can you eat a bicycle? And what he would literally do is he would break down the larger pieces. He would be clear, I'm going to consume the bicycle. That's the defined outcome. And then he would say, okay, let me take the tires off and the handlebars off, and let me break that down into palatable, small, bite-sized pieces until it's so simple, so easy that bite by bite, it was consumed. So in summation, I think that's the real practical way to continue showing up, continue doing the difficult things, even when you don't want to, because you know why you're doing it and you know who it's going to impact. So it's bigger than yourself. And then you say, hey, listen, this little task today is contributing to that big picture 10 years down the road. Let's buckle up and get the job done.
Yeah, I love that. So how do you, when you're doing this and we're putting this in context of entrepreneurs and startups, how do you handle the rejection that comes after you've done the hard stuff? Where it's like you do the hard thing and it's rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. How do you continue doing it?
Frame of mind. James Allen has the simple book, As a Man Thinketh. I think it's only like 27, 30 some pages. It's a very short book. And he talks about this fertilization concept. What you put into your mind, you will reap. So I think that there's this concept that in order to really stay committed, you have to understand that there are seasons, right? There are seasons and times where you plant. There's seasons and times where you maintain, where you harvest, where you let the soil replenish. So it's a really important piece to this whole concept. You've got to be able to stay consistent and know that just like the world has seasons, well, we as humans have seasons too. And it can't always be butterflies and rainbows. There's going to be some tough battles that we will face. But man, does that make such a better story. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a movie where there's no conflict at all, but that would be a pretty boring movie. You've got to have a villain. You've got to have a conflict. And so I think for entrepreneurs out there, it's like having that state of mind is probably your biggest strength, being able to shift the state of mind, not letting that rejection linger for months and months on end. There's an old quote that this gentleman shared with me in the sales world. He says, I never get upset about no's or rejection because every no that I receive is one step closer to the yes. Psychologically speaking, at least in the sales arena, the average person will say no 7 times. So if you keep that tracker in the back of your mind and you go, hey, there's rejection number 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, then boom, now you know this is awesome. I'm getting closer to the yes. So it's the ability to shift that mindset to go from, wow, this is rejection, this sucks, maybe I'm not good enough, to now, hey, I'm taking that step up the stairs so I can get to that doorway and open it up and find the success.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I would just love, is there any specific examples of how you've done it personally?
For rejection,
Well, rejection, or like how is stoicism in this context that we're working, how has it helped you build your business?
well, a plethora of ways. I think in terms of rejection and stoicism is, again, the Stoics always discuss adhering to the core values, right? And if you can honor those core values of wisdom, justice, temperance, we add strength in tribal Stoics because I think it's a good one. But when you honor the core values and stick to them, that's your North Star compass. You can never really go wrong. And there's a difference between output and theory, like we've already mentioned, but you've got to realize that just because it didn't go the way that you planned doesn't mean it wasn't a beautiful lesson. Doesn't mean that you didn't learn a tremendous amount. So you can take those experiences through wisdom, let's say one of the Stoic values. If you honor that wisdom, then even if you get a no or a yes, either way you've learned. In fact, more often than not, you learn tremendously more on the no's than you do the yeses. So I think that it's a great way to just practically break it down, and the Stoics keep it simple. There's something called Miller's Law, which means, actually spelled out, the average adult will only remember 5 to 7 things on a topic. And so he says that you should really honor about 5 to 7 core values. But the simpler that they are and easier to remember, then the more practically you'll be able to implement them. So the other thing that I find fascinating is that Stoicism and Christianity have the same 4 core values, but there's not the heaven and hell component. There's not the evangelism that comes with spreading the word of Stoicism. It's an individual pursuit, but it's not an egotistical, self-centered pursuit. It's one that we know by making ourselves better, we can ripple that into the world and the people around us.
That's great. How do you think ego kills creativity and teamwork?
That's a good question. And I think that ego gets a bad representation because if you were to say there's absolutely no ego involved in anything, you'd be lying to yourself. In order to achieve any great goal, anything that any of us on this call have ever done in our lives that was considered difficult, you had to have a level of ego to get started, right? To think, oh, I can get this done. But if you go too far into that egocentric thought process, then it's all about you. And then you get derailed and now you're done for. So the creativity thing is, I would say, a separate segment, Brandon, because when I think about creativity, and I think this plays into Stoicism and society and everything that we've discussed today, but you've got to understand that every single human has masculine and feminine energy, and one's not better than the other or worse than the other. They are synonymous. However, creativity is more closely related to the feminine energy. So I find that a fascinating piece because you might say egotism could be classified under masculine energy. So when I think about creativity and ego and output as a whole, you need both of them. You need the ego to get started, but you also need the creativity to really build something beautiful. And I think a lot of people sweep that under the rug. It's like there's this condemnation amongst society about men and women and masculine and feminine. But the reality of it is that we need each other. The masculine and the feminine need each other to be a whole unit. And that goes back to Stoicism because it completes the circle. A circle is the Stoic shape, and that's the perfect expression of a completed circuit. So, in answering your question, I think you need both of them.
Can you just do me a favor? Can you just define ego for me? because you were the way you were saying it just sounded like confidence, and I want to make sure that I'm thinking that I'm thinking the same way you're intending it.
Hmm. So I think that if you were to look at it as a chart, and we're talking about ego, right? There's there's one polarity which we'll call ego, and then there's the other polarity of complete self-doubt, right? So I think that they are interchangeable there. Like, self-doubt is obviously the opposite of ego and vice versa. And so I think that egotism or being egocentric, it's not confidence, right? It's more so believing in yourself so much that you are the best thing to ever exist and nothing can derail you. And I think that can be extremely toxic, right? Because you don't want to be on the total other side, but you don't want to be completely an ego. So you kind of flirt with that middle line.
If I had to take a stab at this, I would say confidence is believing in yourself. Ego is believing you're correct.
I like that.
But like in like my view on this is, probably a little different than Keegan's, I guess, but we're probably not that far off. But I see, like, you have to have what I've learned in Stoicism. Let's just start here. What I've learned in Stoicism is like it's better to be able to observe than to commit to something being any one way. So whenever I go down a path, I don't wager my anything on whether it works or not. I just say I'm going to give this a try and let the results be the results. And it's a very hard thing to actually disconnect from and do. And it's not something I think we can do, because if we don't have confidence and we don't take action, you have to still have, a reason to do it. You have to still believe in what you're doing, but trying to disassociate the outcome and go back to the process of just like, okay, let's see where the process is going to take us. Like with this podcast is a perfect example. We have no idea if we'll ever hit even 100 followers or 10,000 followers, or we'll be the next big thing, right? I don't really expect that we have the ability now to be the next big thing, but we're building the skills as we go. And I'm not tied to the results. I'm just going to do 100 videos, and we find out if by the end of it, if it's something we want to pursue, and we reevaluate. But the outcome is irrelevant to the way that we're going to react to the scenario for a given period of measurable time. And that's important too, because at some point you have to go back and say, but having the confidence without the ego, I think is a very difficult thing to build, and something that I only think I could get there because of Stoicism, because of this group. But that's really probably one of the biggest strengths I've pulled out of it.
That's a great share.
Yeah, it's really about not attaching your identity to the outcome, but attaching your identity to the process.
Yeah,
is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, please correct me on that.
Yeah.
But I think you're accurate there. And another thing, taking this just a layer deeper, is that when you think about what would be considered right or wrong, which I think is a basis for the definition of ego, that right or wrong comes down to your moral compass. And interestingly enough, when you look at the United States was founded on Christianity. It was founded on Christian values. It's all over the Declaration of Independence, the proclamation. It's everywhere, right? However, we've also seen a massive disconnect in religion. And I'm not here to speak on religion or politics or anything like that. But my point is that we all have a moral compass. Where did it come from? And so I think that it's interesting because, what one person may say is right or wrong is just simply you saying, hey, we've got different macro beliefs on morality.
So do you think that right and wrong is relative?
To the individual, it has to be, because, how many religions are out there in the world? I will share this, and this is a little bit of a side note here, but I think that the meditative practice is so powerful, especially when you add in your voice and sound vibrations and things like the ah and the because when you look at all the religions in the world, we're talking about moral compass, every single form of God has an ah or an sound. So why don't we take the religious component out of it for a minute and think about the power of words and sounds that we use and how you can use that in order to really connect, right? And that's why I think meditation is also so powerful, because if you bring your voice into that daily practice, you are literally connecting to a morality or a higher power or the earth, the universe, whatever you want to call it. But there is some connection that helps you recenter and reground.
So I want to like just kind of keep going on our conversation about ego here. How do you navigate feedback, criticism, and failure with humility? Like, how do you manage that?
Well, personally, I mean, for full vulnerability, I've been homeless 3 times. I've eaten out of trash cans. So I think that judgment or criticism is a healthy mechanism to make yourself better. However, I will also say, and David Data talks about this a lot. If you haven't checked out The Way of the Superior Man, highly encourage you to do so. It's a great book. But he talks about this concept. If you are a man and you have a particular goal, or a value, a moral compass, whatever it is, and you do not honor your own code, then you are lying to yourself. And if you're lying to yourself, then you're going to equally lie to me. And it might not be consciously, it might be subconsciously, right? But the point remains is that criticism is very healthy. However, you don't want to take criticism from the wrong people. And that's not to say that I'm judging somebody, but if you're in a room filled with men and you're looking at another man eye to eye, you can tell if they honor their own moral compass. And if they do not, it's hard to take judgment or criticism from that man. But if they do, by all means, bring it on, because I want to grow and be better. That's part of the Stoic value of wisdom.
Yeah, I highly agree with that. And I think one of the biggest faults with people trying to bring themselves up is they're listening to advice from people that are not where they want to be. And I think one of the key things we have to adjust is like, before we take any advice from anybody, it's establish where they are now. And if you're okay with going where they are now, not where they want to be, but where they actually are. And you know, like that to me is one of the best tells of whether I'm going to listen to them or how I'm going to listen to it. Maybe I'm going to listen to everybody, but I'm going to listen to the different people differently.
Yeah, I think it's that's a big part of just seeing where people are at, and if you want to learn from them, that's where you need to. If you want to be where they're at, you need to learn from them. You need to do what you can to get around them, to hear how they think, how they talk, how they move, why they make the decisions they make. But but don't do that with someone who's not where you want to be.
And I'll share this segment on that statement, Joel, is that you also have to be very cautious. If you have a mentor and they are where you want to be, you don't want to identically emulate them, because what will happen is at some point you will feel inauthentic and then you'll be disconnected from the actual process. So in having a mentor and following the right people, you also have to be authentically yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm never like, if I opened up a group, I would never be the same as Keegan,
Right.
because even if we believe, and we don't believe exactly the same thing, but even if we believed exactly identically the same thing, I would lead that group differently than Keegan would. And they would both be valuable, they'd both be good, they would be different. And so I just want to agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that, Keegan. Absolutely, 100%. And you've almost got me preaching, so I'm gonna kind of hold off a bit. But yeah, so I would love to just kind of take a moment or two and just kind of go through you, because I would love to know what your daily habits are, because you already talked about exercise and how important it is for everyone to have exercise. But what other habits do you hold dear to you that get you to where you are today?
Good question. So I'll break it into 3 segments. You've got your morning routine, your daily routine, and your night routine, right? Now, I want to be very clear. I think in my world, there are 8 categories that make me up as an individual. Everything from, health, recreation, family, business, development. Like, there's so many things that make us up. And I think the prioritization for each person is going to be different. Even if, let's say, theoretically, Joel and I had the exact same priorities in order, chronologically, it doesn't mean we would honor them the same way or for the same amount of time. So I want to preface with that. But the morning routine for me, I think simply put, personal development, spirituality, and health. If you can focus on those three things before the world, your family, and your business need you, then what you do is you prime your engine. It's just like a weed eater or a leaf blower. You can't just push a button, it turns on right away. You've got to prime the engine, right? It's the same thing for us as individuals. When you get yourself into that flow state, as some people call it, then you can conquer everything else that comes after. Now, in the middle of the day, I think that's where the business, the income, and the family are crucial, right? Ed Milet is a previous mentor of mine, and he breaks his day into 3 segments where his is a little different. It's kind of similar though. And he basically has the beginning of the day where he does certain things, and then the middle of the day is like family business, and then the end of the day he does certain things. And so what that allows him to do is almost in a way have 3 complete days, but you're still the same person. And then that night routine is really closing out the rest of the day, preparing for the next day, and grounding yourself. So if you can break your own individual day into the morning routine, the daily routine, and the night routine, respective to your priorities and where your outcomes are, then I think you'll never go wrong.
I love that. I completely agree with that.
Where do you think action steps take place over planning? Like, I know people that take action with no plans. I know people that plan for years. Where do you see as a good judgment of I have enough to take action or I need more to take action?
I'll share a stat and then a story with you. Well, let me share this. Let me share the story first. So this is a real story. There is a general and a lieutenant, bless you, and he is tasked with determining their next move. So he goes into the war room. He spends 56 hours over 2 weeks researching all the plausible pathways for option A and option B. And then the general basically, he's like, all right, guys, we're going to meet. We're going to talk about this. Let's go into the room and sit down. And so the lieutenant starts to share his information. And then he gets 5 minutes in. The general goes, go with option B, put all your energy, effort, and resources in it. Let's go. And this lieutenant's sitting there. He's like, what the heck? I just put 56 hours into this and he made a decision in 5 minutes. How could he do it? So he goes to his door and he knocks on the door and he goes, do I have permission to speak freely? He said, yes, you do. He said, how could you possibly make a decision without all the information? And he said, listen, we will never have all the information. So when we picked option B and we go all in, we are either going to be right and we're 2 steps ahead, or we'll be wrong and we pivot back to option A. That's the story. The percentage, and this is a quote from Elon Musk many years ago. He said that if you ever look for more than 70% of the information, then you're doing yourself a disservice. It's really rooted in fear versus execution. So the story and that statistic I would share collectively, I think that you don't need all the information. You don't need 100% of the planning phase to actually implement. Now, you do want to plan. You do want to have that information. You want to have a pathway and be clear. But if you're waiting until you have 100% perfect plan or whatever it might be, then really what's happening is you're allowing fear to take over.
Yeah, there's a really good book I read. I think might be called Atomic Habits. That they said this, where he said there was a professor and he had he had his 2 different classes, and he assigned one of them. He said, I'm going to grade you guys on 1 photo for the year. The other, he assigned, they take 100 photos with no measure of quality for the year. And the question is, which group of students would be better photographers by the end of the year? And before I heard this, my initial outcome, the way I thought about things, was the group that had a whole year to make 1 photo. But the reality was the students consistently that had 100 photos had tried 100 times to shoot a photo, and they were far better at photography by the end of the year. And a lot of times it's just finding ways to take action, even if it's small steps. But each time we take action, we learn. And that's the other thing, is to be able to reflect on the outcome at the end and then adjust. And I think that's where keeping the confidence without the ego really plays off to being something. Yeah. So
Yeah. I have my last question before we hit a lightning round here. Um, what books, writers, or ancient texts do you think that every builder should read?
Whew, this is a hard one. I read usually about 3 to 5 different books each day. I'd say one of my staples is definitely Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I think that's a classic. I really am a big fan of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and and this is more on the male spectrum, right? This isn't a universal. And then I would definitely say The Way of the Superior Man by David Data. I think there are a ton of other great collective books, but if you put those three together, it will really emphasize the relationships, the business, emotional intelligence, and the individual levels. So I think, if I just had to boil it down to three quickly, those would probably be my three for men. And in a general sense, I really wouldn't change too much for females that are listening. I would just probably take out The Way of the Superior Man and shift that with some other. There are some other really great ones out there. I'd still keep the other two though.
Hmm. All right. So let's go into our lightning round. And like I've been kind of, as we've been going, kind of building up the lightning round because my flow screwed up this one. My process didn't reveal the result that it normally does. So I have a few questions here for you. The first one is, what is your favorite Stoic quote and why?
The Obstacle is the Way by Marcus Aurelius. And I would say it is because I think often when we hit adversity, most people pack their bags and turn around. But the beautiful thing about facing that obstacle and marching through it is to everything you both have elicited today. You become a stronger version. You have more emotional intelligence. You've learned from it and you can pivot in a different way moving forward.
I love it. All right. What is one modern habit that quietly kills resilience?
Mm. Procrastination, and I would pair that with distraction. I think we are in one of the most beautiful eras of human existence. It's easier than ever before historically to be absolutely amazing. It's also easier historically than ever before to be absolutely boring and not build something. So those distractions and that procrastination prevent so many talented, incredible individuals from building what they really were placed here to build. And that's the downfall of a lot of great people.
yeah, I completely agree with that. I think when building a business, it's a multi-year venture, and if you get 70-80% of the way to revenue and then you change your mind, not that you haven't learned skills and there's things you can fall forward and still learn from it, but now you're going to start all over again. Even if you are, it doesn't really matter where you are in the process. Anytime you switch gears, you're taking a huge step back before you can make it forward. So you need to be very thoughtful about when you do switch gears, and it's really the right decision, or do would you be further switching gears or staying where you are for another several years and building on what you already have? And it's a constant thing that we do in MPD. It's like, do we want to adjust this model or build further? Because there are so many opportunities all the time. And that's the other thing. Once you start, I I'm going to answer the question even though it wasn't asking. But what I think is the biggest killer is once you start to recognize success patterns, you see them everywhere. You see opportunity every place you look. You go, oh, I could turn this into a business. I could turn that into a business. Oh, I could automate that in like 100 hours. Like you start to go boom, and it's just you're like it's over. You're overstimulated with options, and you have to be to say no to all of them all the time and just focus in on making one thing awesome and better than everybody else. And that's like a very hard, to me, that's the hardest thing for me to overcome and to focus in on. But I'm getting pretty good at it. Not
I like
perfect.
what Brandon I like what Brandon he says this actually quite a bit to me. And he's like, you don't have to be perfect, but the people who are known for what they do are only about 20% better than everybody else.
Mhm.
However, it takes a lot of effort to get that 20% better.
That's right. You don't have to be great to get started, but you got to get started to be great.
Exactly.
That is
Exactly.
awesome.
So Keegan, you're having in this question, you're having a bad day. What's your reset button? How do you reset to just kind of stop and just move forward?
It's a great question. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, there are events that are unconventional or uncomfortable that happen a lot, but bad days overall don't really occur too often, and maybe years. And I would say that the morning routine is one of the most quintessential pieces for that. Because if you set the tone for the day early on, then you can conquer it. And so there have been moments where maybe I overslept or something like that happened. And so how I would reset in that scenario is to find a way to ground myself. So I'm a big believer in, and this might sound funny, but I'm a big believer in being barefoot and just simply going out into nature and walking amongst nature until you can reset and ground. I find that to be a sure key every single time. Just leave the phone away from you, no distractions, just go and sit near some water and nature. Oh my goodness, it works every time.
You live out in the mountains, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, okay, okay. I figured because that is the typical mountain man response. But it's true. But it's true when I've lived in the mountains as well, and there's something about sitting near a waterfall or a river or even a creek and just sitting there and just taking it in that is a reset for everything. I don't care if you've had a good day or a bad day. When you're done that, you're back to square one, and it's amazing.
They call this chi in the Chinese culture, and the Chinese believe that the mountains hold more chi than any other place on earth.
Interesting.
It's if you look in the Bible, they talk about high places all the time. All the time. They're talking about high places, and you make sacrifices on high places, and or they set up altars on high places or tore down the altars from high places. So it's not just, but if you look throughout religion, you will find that high places are important. The Mount Zion in the Bible, you can talk about it consistently all over the place. I got distracted. Sorry.
No, that's awesome.
I love those little things that most people don't see, that it's like when you start talking, they just come out.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really fascinating, Joel and Keegan. That's something I've not been exposed to before. I mean, I guess I've heard of it, but never really put all that together.
in the Irish used to have this thing called thin places. And it's places where the spirit realm and the physical realm, there's a thin veil between it. And those places are generally mountains, but if you actually look, you'll see those places, and those are the places where either that become holy, like Jerusalem. Everyone seems to think Jerusalem is a holy place. Everyone does. And but if you look at sorry, I'm starting to geek out because this is the stuff I love. But it's like, but you look at it and it's like, well, what made it holy for so many people? Because it's not just one religion, it's like 3 or 4 religions that consider Jerusalem holy. Why? It's because it's one of those thin places. It's one of those places where the spirit realm and the physical realm are so close that you actually feel more spiritual just by being there.
Hmm.
It's why there's pilgrimages to Jerusalem all the time. People from the US will make a pilgrimage, a flight, but we'll make a flight to Jerusalem just to be there, to be on the Mount of Olives, to be on Calvary,
No,
to go, or if you're Muslim, to go to I can't remember what their mosque is called, but the big Muslim mosque is there. The Jewish Temple Mount is there. Like you name it in Jerusalem, it seems to be there. Anyway, sorry, just I could go and go and
do you know
go.
what the elevation in Jerusalem is?
I'm gonna Google it right now.
Okay. Uh,
1 second.
That is
Brendan, you want to ask the next question?
That's an interesting point, though, because if you think about the creation of life, then you think about proximity to the sun, but there are actual variables to that, right? If you go up to Mount Everest, which is 29,000 some feet of elevation, not everybody can sustain that because of lung capacity, elevation changes, the air gets thinner, but you're getting closer to the sun. So that's something interesting to think about.
Jerusalem's elevation is 2,474 feet. I don't know. I don't have anything to compare that to because I know that New York is 33 feet.
Well,
But
Denver
it's
is
also
the mile high, so that's at like around 6,000 feet or 5,680, I think.
180
5,280.
feet for
Yeah.
Denver.
Whoops.
All
I
right.
don't know miles.
Just,
Anyways.
all right.
Well,
Sorry. That question went south on me. I was expecting a quick one. That one was not quick.
that's okay. It was a really interesting conversation that I don't know.
We wouldn't have had that without that question. So, but what's what is that one thing that most people worry about that a Stoic wouldn't? And why would a Stoic not worry about that?
Death. Psychologists say that the one fear that has every single person by a hold is the fear of death. Because some people may never experience the fear of poverty. Some people might not really experience the fear of criticism, but we all experience the fear of death. And the Stoics basically say, I'm paraphrasing here, but Marcus Aurelius says, do not fear death because you will greet it with the tools you have today or better tools. The concept is if you follow your virtues and your values and you show up every day and you do what an honorable Stoic or an honorable individual would do, you don't have anything to fear. Yet most people have not come to a conclusion about the fear of death, but we also don't know when we will be taken. And so often you see people, and I've experienced this in different fields, you'll see people getting closer to their deathbed, and now they're scrambling to understand spirituality, religion. What does all of this mean? What is the concept of life and death? And that creates a tremendous amount of fear because they haven't tested the waters of what comes after death. So I think that the Stoics have a beautiful thought on that. And that's, of course, control what you can control. Marcus Aurelius also says that every single night he looks into his children's and his wife's eyes because either the next day they may not wake up or he may not wake up. And so he doesn't hold that in contempt. He holds that in aspiration to say, let me enjoy the present moment and be with these people to the depth that I can be. So I think that's something that's really beautiful about Stoicism.
Yeah, I agree. And the way that I've seen that play on my life, being the program or being a student in this, is focus on the process and not the result. And that's actually what I was thinking when I heard the question was like, oh yeah, it's the process. You have to detach from the result and just trust the process and work the process, and the result will come if you stay on the process long enough. And I mean, like you're talking about eating a bite or cutting down a tree or going to the gym, like all these things are going to work if you do the process. You might not have the best process. That's not as important as doing the process and being consistent with the process.
Yeah. I've been just kind of talking about process because you have to really learn to enjoy the process or you'll miss life altogether. I've been building a house. I don't know if I told you this, Keegan, but I bought a house and I've been renovating it for 3 months. And when I say I've been renovating it, my father-in-law has been renovating it. Um, but I have to be very careful that I'm looking at it and be like, no, I'm enjoying the process because I get impatient. Like honestly, if I'm not enjoying the process, I get impatient. I get frustrated because I'm not getting what I want out of it. And I have to be able to sit there and go, I'm going to enjoy the process. And even kind of that between what Brandon, what you and Keegan were saying, that's really what it is. It's like I'm going to enjoy the process of life because I'm not going to have life tomorrow. I might not have life tomorrow. Tomorrow, Brandon might be doing my product developer without me. And there's nothing we can do about that because we can't control what we can't control.
Yeah.
But I can control me and I can control my emotional state and I can control that tomorrow I'm going to show up if I'm here.
And I think that's more of an important message, what you just articulated there, Joel, today than ever before, because the way of life is so different all across the world. It's different in your respective city right now, how one person believes is the right way or the wrong way. everybody's got different theories on that. And so there's so much chaos that you've got to quiet that chaos and say, well, I can't control what Brandon says, thinks, feels, or does, but I can control what I think, feel, and do. And then there's also that process. What you talked about is it's not the end destination; it's who you become along the journey, and that's the beauty of it. It's all those golden nuggets. I want to share one quick story on that. There's a gentleman who's rock climbing, and he's on this hike up the mountain to get to this next rock summit, and he basically slips and falls, and he's hanging on the side of this massive cliff, holding onto a root. And below him, all he sees is death. And above him, there's nobody around. There's no way out. But while he's sitting there holding onto this root, he looks to his left and he sees the most luscious strawberry. He grabs it and he admires it and he eats it. He goes, wow, what a beautiful thing. In that chaos, he was able to find the beauty. And that's so important for the journey.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, so one more thing, and then we're gonna finish up. And I thought this was so great, so I kind of just included it in. I want you to finish the sentence. It's not a question, but I want you to finish the sentence. Okay. A Stoic walks into a crisis and finish the sentence, Keegan.
Finds peace in the moment.
I love it. Love it. Keegan, we're basically out of time. Where can our audience connect with you? Where does the Tribal Stoics meet? How can they get involved?
Yeah, we love to have guests. You can find more information on tribalstoics.group. That's TRIBALSTOICS.group. And I'm always open to conversation or emails. I think that there's a lot of beauty in supporting others. So, people can always reach out to me via Coach Keeg. It's coach like coach, KEEG @gmail.com. And I'm, happy to have conversations, and, we'd all love to see you in the group.
Yeah, and there'll be a link below as always that you can.
Yeah, as always, we're going to put the links, those two links, tribalstoics.group and coachkeeg.com. We're going to make sure those are in the description. As well as when you see there's little short clips coming out, those will be there too. All right. Again, if you want advice, or if you want a coach to help you with your process as you're building your business, go check out coachkeeg.com. If you want to develop your product, come to myproductdeveloper.com, and we would love to be able to help you out. As always, like, subscribe, and we will talk to you next time. See ya.